Yes, I am.
Cooper. White balance. White balance. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Seconds. So. Bill, Donnie, you good? All right.
Break a leg, gentlemen.
Dustin, do you have water? Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about water tonight. We all ready? We got everybody here? Audience good? Ready to take their seats? We are live is what I hear on my telephone. So we're going to let the population load. Got a couple more people taking their seats. Jonathan, you ready?
I am ready.
Awesome. Hello and welcome to Congressional Confessional, a primary debate between 10 of the Republican candidates seeking to be the next congressperson from Oklahoma's 2nd District in eastern Oklahoma. 4 other GOP candidates elected not to participate tonight. My name is Trey Savage. I'm the editor-in-chief of NonDoc.com. We're a journalism publication based here in Oklahoma. I'm excited to moderate tonight's debate with Jonathan Cooper of News on 6.
Tress, thank you so much. News on 6 is very happy to be a partner in this. We are streaming this on our Facebook page. We're also streaming it on our website, newson6.com. We also have a lot of media partners in this. NonDoc, where Trace is at, they are streaming it on their Facebook page as well. Also, The Frontier is streaming it on their Facebook page. So The Frontier is also going to be fact-checking tonight online as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so be careful how much you want to exaggerate tonight, guys. We got some people who are going to check those facts afterwards. Debates do take a little bit of time and some money to put on, and I want to thank the financial sponsors of NonDoc's 2022 Political Debate Series, including the State Chamber of Oklahoma, AARP Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Public School Resource Center, the capital advocacy firm of McSpadden, Milner, and Robinson, as well as the Oklahoma Association of Realtors and Overman Legal Group. Thank you so much for believing in public debates. Public debates matter. That's a great time for some applause. Jonathan?
Yeah, I got just a quick message for the audience here. Thank you guys so much for being here in person. We really appreciate it. We just asked 2 things of you guys. First, could you share this on Facebook if you have an opportunity to? It'll reach more people. The more people that see this, the better, obviously. And then also, if you get a chance, just silence your cell phone so we don't have to stop the debate or anything like that. So share it and silence your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing the same right on my phone right now, not trying to be rude. Those of you on stage probably pay somebody to share this. So, if you're being paid to run their campaign, share this right now so people can see your candidates talk. I do need to say this to the audience. Please hold your applause until we reach the end of each round of questions. We had a little bit of a rough audience at last week's Attorney General debate, and there was a lot of shouting and things like that. I'm just not going to tolerate that, and I've got security here to warn people and then ask people to leave. And, of course, if the whole audience is really rowdy, if I need to, I will just get everybody out of the room so we can continue talking to the thousands of people watching this across eastern Oklahoma tonight. Let's talk about the format. We're going to have each candidate do a 60-second opening statement, and then we're going to have 3 rounds of questions. Then we'll have 60-second closing statements as well. We talked backstage about following those time rules that Mr. Brinkman over there is going to give us. We randomized an order earlier, and I am going to introduce the candidates very quickly as they give their opening statements. Mr. Avery Fricks, you are an OU grad, you're a Mvskoke County resident, and you are a state representative in the Oklahoma legislature. 60 seconds opening statement to you.
Well, first, let me say thank you all for being here tonight. As he said, my name is Avery Fricks. I'm running for U.S. Congress to take our country back from Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and the liberal woke left that seek to destroy everything that President Trump was able to accomplish. I live in Mvskoke, Christian, conservative, and small business owner. Grew up in small business that my great-granddad started a small business of my own. My wife, who's here with us tonight, even has a small business of her own. And I ran for the state legislature to protect those small businesses that allow us to achieve the American dream. That's why I ran for the legislature, and I'm proud of the work I've done there to help protect girls' sports. It says biological men can't compete against girls. Proud of the work we've done to say thank you to President Trump, naming a section of highway after him. Proud of the work we've done to give law enforcement, our first responders, their first pay raise in state history. And I'm running for U.S. Congress to take those same conservative values and to protect our American dream in the United States Congress. I'm Avery Fricks, and I look forward to the debate tonight. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, sir. Next up is Mr. Marty Quinn. He was a member of the House of Representatives in the Oklahoma legislature, then the Senate. He's from Rogers County, and he has the incomparable Donna Garlick as his executive assistant. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Trace. 12 years ago, I was an outsider, a businessman, a father, a husband, all those things that we say that we're needing in D.C. The only thing different today is that I took that business sense, I took that family sense, I took the community, I took the church, and all those things that me and my family was involved in, and I spent the next 12 years in the legislature lowering your taxes, improving small business situations. All of those things I did by having something outside of state government. I never depended upon that check, and I'll do the same thing in Washington, D.C. If you want somebody that you can trust, if you want somebody that has a standard of truth, if you want somebody that has the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong, I'll go to D.C. and I'll come back home when you say so, and I'll make sure that while I'm there that I do not worry about the next election cycle. My name is Marty Quinn. I'm a senator from Claremore, and I appreciate your vote on June the 28th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quinn. Up next is Mr. Wes Snowfire. He's an accomplished pugilist who's doubling his extra security for us tonight. Hopefully we don't need that. He's also a representative on the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council. Mr. Snowfire.
Thank you again. My name is Wes Snowfire. Grew up just outside of northeast Oklahoma at Talcall. My wife and I, we've raised our 3 children there today, and I grew up in a faith-based family with my dad, who was a pastor. I was a nationally heavyweight ranked boxer for about 10 years, but then I took my fighting successful career by fighting corruption and fighting for financial transparency of the Cherokee Nation, where I've served being the only conservative voice for the past 3 years. You know, I've gotten good at calling out corruption and recognizing it, and one thing that the Cherokee Nation has done has been using the Mcgregor decision as a Trojan horse to bring the liberal agenda, Biden-Obama administration ideas right here to northeast Oklahoma. And they've also tried to affect people even on this stage. They've bought out current candidate Johnny Teehee by accepting nearly half of his contribution from the Coffee family. We also have Avery Fricks, who has given to the Biden administration Trojan horse rider Chuck Hoskins Jr. So vote Wes Snowfire if you want someone different, someone who will change and fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next we have Mr. John Bennett. He's a former state representative from Sequoyah County, as well as a former, most recent, I think until April, Republican Party chairman here in Oklahoma. 60 seconds, Mr. Bennett.
My name is John Bennett, running for United States Congress for District 2, husband, father of 5, small business owner. I'm a retired United States Marine that served in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm currently the pastor of Lee Creek Assembly of God Church. I don't think I have to tell you all this, but we're at war for the very soul of this nation. Our God-blessed constitutional republic is under attack. And I, for one, will not back up, back down, or give up. I will stand and fight for this constitutional republic. We don't need politics as usual anymore. What we need are bold, principled fighters that will stand up and fight for this republic and we the people. We need to start putting America first again. American farmers and ranchers and veterans first. We need to put American jobs and American families first. We need to put American borders first. I say we build that wall. We need to put American oil first. I say we drill, baby, drill, and we gain back our energy independence. If you want a real fighter that's going to stand up and fight for this republic and we the people, then send me to Washington, D.C. on June the 28th. God bless you all. God bless the great state of Oklahoma. And remember this, Bennett is in it to win it.
And he's 10 seconds over time. Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett. Okay, Mr. Barker, next 60 seconds to you. You're a member of the Quapaw Nation Business Committee, Secretary-Treasurer. You're an oil and gas attorney and business owner, and you're from Delaware County, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. So we have 3 major issues facing us here in Oklahoma, and as well as the United States itself, would be energy, inflation, and especially in Oklahoma, tribal relations. These are my areas of expertise, and this is why I'm running for Congress. My name is Guy Barker, and I would like to be your newest member of Congress from Oklahoma. So I am a petroleum engineer, as Trace said. I own and operate a small oil and gas company, which I put together after being operations engineer with Samson Resources, the largest privately owned oil and gas company at the time. So we have fought for energy independence. We saw much more traction on this during the Trump administration, and in the last year and a half, this has all been completely dashed and thrown away. There is an unbelievable commitment to nonsensical ideas, renewable energies, and that, frankly, we do not have the technology nor the infrastructure for it now. We have individuals that are denying the priorities that are facing us here. Every single man, woman, and retired individual here in Oklahoma's money is running out day by day. Send me to Washington so we can start remedying some of these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barker. Up next, Mr. Chris Schiller. You're a pharmacist from Mvskoke County. 60 seconds to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm Chris Schiller. I'm a Christian husband and father, conservative business owner, and local pharmacist. Born and raised in District 2 in Mvskoke. It's where my wife of 23 years and I still call home today, where we've raised our 2 sons, Watson and Cash. Becky and I own our own small business, a local independent community pharmacy called Economy Pharmacy, with locations in Muskogee and in Tulsa. I've never ran for public office, and I'm a true political outsider. A little over 3 years ago, I had a patient, a really good friend, bring a letter into the pharmacy. The letter was from his insurance company, and it said he can no longer use our store. He was being forced to use a chain or mail order. And that's not right. And so I started working to make sure patients had access to health care and had a choice of where to receive that health care. You know, in politics, I don't see a lot of people telling us the truth, and I certainly don't see a lot of people standing up to fight for what's right. And another thing is our southern border is a national crisis, and we need to quit listening to people talk about it, and we need people to actually fix it. I look forward to your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schiller. Up next, Mr. Clint Johnson. You're a Marine Corps veteran who worked in the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. I believe you live in Cherokee County.
Yes, sir.
60
My name
seconds.
is Clint Johnson. I got out of high school, went to the Marine Corps, came back, got hired at Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, was there about 5 years before I went to narcotics, worked there about 9.5 years before I went to National Investigative Intelligence Agency with Dying Corner National U.S. State Department, worked to Ministry of Interior in Iraq. Anybody else sick of politicians? Every one of them need term limits from now on. We have got to get these career politicians out of Washington, D.C. and start putting fresh faces back up there. They have gotten rich off the taxpayer people. They have forgotten about every one of us out here. And what I see is Democrats and Republicans are out there fighting amongst each other, and nothing's being done for anybody in this room or anybody watching. It's time that we change who we send to Washington, D.C. If we don't start changing who we send up there, Washington, D.C. will never change. Clint Johnson, U.S. Congress, June 28th. If you give me the opportunity to earn your vote, I'll show you. Our politicians will be here every 120 days. Me, standing here explaining what I'm doing in Washington, D.C. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Swallow that microphone for us in the future. Mr. Dale Derby, you are a former state representative. You're also a pharmacist from Owasso. Which county, Rogers or Tulsa?
Rogers.
Oh,
I live in. And Dale is my dad who passed away.
Oh, I'm David. I'm sorry. My goodness. Well, he was a good man, so it's not bad to say his name out here, right?
That's correct. I agree with you. David Derby, former representative. Actually, I'm a former law enforcement, worked in the crime lab. I actually have a doctorate degree in pharmacy. I live in Rogers County. I actually operate a $23 million business today. I'm actually married to a tornado. That's my joke. This year, 25 years, and we're adopted parents of 2 fantastic boys. The reason why I'm running for Congress is this. I'm fed up with the fact that we have open borders. I'm fed up with the fact that we have reckless spending. I'm fed up with the fact that we have this liberalization of our school districts. And I'm fed up with the fact that we have this overtaxation and regulation on our small businesses. I see it on a day in and day out basis, and I'm tired of it. And we got to have somebody that has a backbone to stand up for it. Dale Derby, as Tracy said, was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He taught me how to have a backbone and stand up and say, no, I'm going to Washington, D.C. and tell Biden and Pelosi, stop, you're an idiot. David Derby for Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Johnny Teehee, you're the police chief in Mvskoke, Oklahoma. I believe you may live in Sequoia County, and you are a Cherokee Nation citizen.
That's correct. Thank you.
Make sure that's on. There we go.
My name is Johnny Teehee, and
Is he on? Try it again. It shows green. Okay, good.
My name is Johnny Teehee. Still working? No.
I think so. I think you're good.
Okay. Johnny Teehee. I was raised in Vian, Oklahoma by my grandparents, 2 full-blood Cherokee Indians. Didn't have much, but we had 2 things my grandma taught me that I keep today. One is God. She said, throughout the course of your life, you're going to have coworkers, relatives, spouses, all kinds of different people that you run into that will walk away from you, turn your back on you. God never will. The other thing she told me was work ethic. She said, doesn't matter where you work, who you work with, what you're doing, or how much you're making, always do your best every day. Not every other day, not 2 or 3 days a week, every day. So I took those 2 things, started out the Vian Police Department, went to the Mvskoke Police Department, worked my way through the ranks, and was promoted to Chief of Police in 2018. I've been in the Mvskoke Police Department now for 35 years. I want to take those 2 things, God and work ethic, to Washington, D.C. If there's any place that needs it, it's D.C. And if your fact checkers are working tonight, they'll know that what Mr. Snowfire said is absolutely wrong.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Dustin Roberts. You're a state representative in Bryan County. You're a Choctaw Nation citizen, and you have had a various business interests in your life. So, 60 seconds.
Thank you, Trace. My name is Dustin Roberts, and I'm running for Congress because our country is at a crossroads. I've owned several small businesses, from a convenience store to a construction company. I'm a decorated Navy veteran, and I'm a current state representative. I ran for office 12 years ago because the state of Oklahoma had problems. and they were in my business, and I could not prosper at a convenience store. So I ran. After 12 years, the state of Oklahoma is in a better position today than it was 12 years ago. I want to take that knowledge and go to Washington, D.C., because they are entangled in our everyday lives. And it's going to take somebody that understands the state budgets and the county budgets, and along with the federal budgets, to get states' rights back and allow the state of Oklahoma and other states to build the programs that fit their state better. Veterans are being left on the vine. The care has been retracted back, and we have nobody standing up for the United States veterans that took an oath to die for this country. It's time for somebody to stand up. My name is Dustin Roberts, and I'm running to fix America.
Thank you, Representative Roberts. Okay, round of applause time. That's a lot of opening statements. That's a lot of candidates. I appreciate you guys all telling us about yourselves. Mr. Cooper, did you stay awake over there? I didn't give you much to say, did I?
I was awake, yes.
Okay, let's go to our first round of questions. It's titled Nothing's Quiet on the Domestic Front. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, so for this first round, we're going to go in alphabetical order. Very easy question. It's a very simple one. The question is this. Think about the specific neighborhood you live in. Describe it to us. Tell us a tangible need facing your neighbors right now. We're going to go alphabetically. So, Mr. Barker, you're up first. 60 seconds. Tell us where you're from. What some tangible needs facing your neighbors right now.
So, originally from Miami, Oklahoma, and then live in Delaware County now, around the Grand Lake area, but a tangible need that we see day in, day out is that nothing is very close to us. We have individuals in my community that have to drive long distances to and from just for groceries, to drop their kids off at school or to simply to make it to the hospital or handle all of their day-to-day needs back and forth to work. Now, as we can see, this punitive treatment that we're getting as a result of mismanagement of our oil and gas industry and our economy in general has sent gas prices skyrocketing and inflation as well. But we need to be able to start making common sense decisions on deliverability for petrochemicals here in the United States. We need to reopen our refineries and be able to get our supply back. So otherwise we will not see these prices go down. They will only continue to climb. We're seeing this with gasoline, and we are going to start seeing it with liquid natural gas, propane as well, for other rural communities later this fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barker, thank you. Mr. Bennett.
So I live in a rural area. There's a lot of farmers and ranchers. And right now we've got a lot of foreign entities coming and buying up our farmland and our ranch land. It's driving the prices up, and these foreigners are buying it every single day with piles and piles of cash. As U.S. Congressman, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to file a bill that will prevent any foreigners from buying up American farmland, specifically Oklahoma farmland. That's a problem for them to buy that, because if they control the land, they control the food. And if you can control the food, you can control the people. It's a huge problem. It needs to be fixed, and that's one of the first issues that I'm going to take care of when I get to the United States Congress. JohnBennettForCongress.com. You can go out to my Facebook page, John Bennett for Congress, or you can go out to my YouTube channel and watch some of my debates on the House floor in regards to all these issues we're talking about tonight. John Bennett for Congress.
Mr. Bennett, thank you. Mr. Derby.
Thank you for the question. Whether you live in my neighborhood or whether you live in Vian or whether you live in Durant, the same problem is going to be universal. The fact of the matter is the failed policies of Biden and Pelosi has made our economy non-viable. Inflation is out astronomical. The gas prices are astronomical. It costs $200 a day to drive a combine to produce wheat in 2020. It costs $750 a day today to do the same job. If it costs that much more dollars today to take that wheat to the store to produce bread, then you go to the local grocery store and you have to put gas in your car to go to that local grocery store, and you have more money out of your pocket to go buy that bread, then the same problem, whether you live in my neighborhood or those other neighborhoods, is reoccurring. That's the problem. We have failed policies of Biden and Pelosi. You're looking at the only guy who took on the oil and gas industry's taxes and burdens and regulations and eliminated them in the state of Oklahoma.
Mr. Derby, thank you. Mr. Fricks.
I live in a very rural area. There's only one other neighbor on my street. But you know, the inflation caused by the Biden administration is hitting my neighbors and everybody that I know the hardest. You can't afford fertilizer anymore. Some of my neighbors are having to decide whether they want to go out of business, a farming business that they've been in for generations. We can't afford the basic necessities because of the Biden administration's failure and their lack of cutting government spending. We have to stop paying people to sit at home. We've got to get people back to work. We've got to get the economy moving again, just like it was under President Trump. We've got a plan to do that. Visit averyfricks.com. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
I live in a rural community in Tahlequah. My biggest thing that I see out here is inflation and energy. The other day I was driving around Tahlequah and I picked up a lady that was walking about 10 miles out of town. It was 89 degrees. Picked her up, she got in my truck, I asked her, ma'am, what do you need? She need a ride? She said, I'm going to return my books at the library. She was 86 years old. She didn't have the gas money to drive to town, and she didn't have anybody she could call that she would be a burden to. Our economy is killing us. The gas price is killing us. It's time to send people back to Congress that are going to go to work for the American people, that aren't going to go up there and fight and argue or anything else. That's going to go up there and put the work in. It's going to get our country straightened back up and make this a better country. And what we need to remember up here is this ain't about us. It's about every one of you all and everybody driving up and down the road and everybody watching right now. It's about the citizens of this community, of this District 2, Oklahoma, and the United States that we represent. Don't have an ego. Don't have a personal agenda. Go do your job. How hard is that? Thank you.
Mr. Snowfire.
Well, I think everybody living in 2nd Congressional District lives in rural America. So we know that inflation is a big issue. However, out of 28 counties, we're the only one that has addressed the Mcgregor decision. That is the biggest threat right now and how it's being handled to all of the 2nd Congressional District of Oklahoma. I'm the only one that sat down with tribal leaders. I'm the only one that sat down with state leaders to find a solution. And I look forward to talking with you guys more about that tonight because I know it's going to be in the second part of this panel. However, I'm the authority on Mcgregor, and I stand for that, but I've seen an inconsistency in law and a rise in crime wave. And that's the reason why everybody is looking to us to solve that issue. And we've been addressing it, we've been standing firm with that, and we're looking forward to getting your vote June 28th so you can send us to D.C. to make sure we solve that issue. Appreciate it.
Mr. Quinn.
My neighbors are feeling the effects of the Biden-Pelosi trickle-down destruction of our economy. But it's a destruction of our economy because there's a purpose behind it. And that purpose is to take capitalism away and replace it with a socialistic society that makes you dependent upon the government ahead of you. Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's energy independence, or whether it is over-regulation that is destroying our supply chain. Doesn't make any difference if you're a farmer. It doesn't make any difference if you're a restaurant owner, if you're a hardware store owner, or if you own the local clothing store. All of them are feeling the effect of the Biden-Pelosi trickle-down destruction of the oil and gas industry, and it's all for a purpose. I want you to remember that. I will challenge those things. I will challenge those things to the highest level if you elect me June 28th to go to D.C. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Dustin Roberts again. I'm from Bryan County, which is a rural part of Oklahoma, the southeastern corner there. There's several issues, as we've talked about with inflation there, that's hitting our county governments, where our county governments now cannot go out and grade roads, can't do such like that. So it's the government that's in our business that's driving up the cost of petroleum, gas, that needs to be pulled back. The second thing is the overreach from the Corps of Engineers that's not allowing the economic development to grow in our area. Pulling back those regulations and letting the local communities prosper. One of the first pieces of legislation I will be filing will be the Taxpayer Protection Act. And what it does is allows the federal government to give down excess equipment that's just sitting in the fields rotting, instead of having the county governments come out and buy those equipment back. So what we can do is give the county governments the equipment that they need to do the job that's already been paid for with taxpayer dollars, instead of making the county governments and state governments buy back those equipments.
Thank you. Mr. Schiller.
Excellent question. I'm from Mvskoke, and I'm not from rural Oklahoma. And the Muskogeans struggle with a lot of different things right now. And I think the number one thing that we struggle with is the open border, the southern border. We are being inundated with illegal grows in Mvskoke County. And that's all coming up from the southern border. We need to reinstate the Trump policies. We need to build the Trump wall. We need to reinstate, detain, and deport. And we need to add three things to that. We need to impeach Joe Biden and remove Secretary Mayorkas from office. We need to not fund any type of government funding until we remove the policy of catch and release. What the left does now, instead of detain and deport, they catch the illegal immigrants, release them into the United States wherever they want to go with a bus ticket and a free cell phone, and that is unsustainable. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Teehee, you're last.
I'm from a rural area, but with regards to the police department, one of the things that affects both those in the county and in cities all across the 2nd District is our southern border being open. The absolute influx of fentanyl is killing young people, young adults, the overdoses. Literally every other day we have somebody that we're having to save on Narcan. If it wasn't for that Narcan, the overdose rates would be ridiculous. The deaths are coming, and it's all because of that southern border that Biden has absolutely opened up. Not just the drugs, but the criminals coming across there are our biggest issue in the entire 2nd District.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I've got the next question. We're going to start with Mr. Schiller. I actually didn't think we were going to hear a whole lot about President Biden and Speaker Pelosi, but I guess we will tonight. I don't know. Mr. Schiller, that's a joke. You'll go first on this question. Numerous small and mid-sized communities in eastern Oklahoma have huge water problems, antiquated treatment and distribution systems, lead pipes, and limited financial resources to make improvements. I was in a town the other day where some folks hadn't had running water at their house for 2 months. Is there enough attention on this topic right now, and what can be done?
You know, Trace, as a political outsider, as a business owner, we see our citizens struggle with lots of things. Obviously, there's not enough attention on that. I'm not an expert, and I don't pretend to be an expert in every field. But running water, I think water is our most precious resource that we have. And everyone needs running water and clean water, and to be able to rely on that. And I would work hard to make sure that all Americans, especially us here in the 2nd District, would have reliable running water resources.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Derby, up next to you. And just so you know, I have David written right here. We're going to go to you on this one. Keeping people on their toes.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. So the answer to this question is that I worked on this particular issue on a different avenue whenever we have new neighborhoods developed. OERB has a fund, a revolving fund, that I actually found money here within the state of Oklahoma for those particular problems that they run into, that we are allowing neighborhoods and developers to tap into to clean up these particular problems that you're talking about, these lead pipes and stuff like this. That could be something that the cities can talk to OERB that's available for them to clean up the lead pipes, because that's something that's environmental, that OERB, that I worked personally with on abandoned wells within the state of Oklahoma, because I had a family within my personal district that had their gas turned off because of the fact they had abandoned well underneath the foundation that was percolated the natural gas through the stone. It was all types of discombobulation for this family. That's the type of leadership that you're going to find with me, that we're going to find sources and we're going to find solutions for the problems at the end of the day. Whoa.
There you go. That's the whoa sign. Hold it up, Bennett, for everybody to see. There we go. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Fricks, same question to you. Is there enough attention on this topic of water access right now? What should be done?
Yeah, thanks for the question. This all goes back to a financial issue. We got to have funding and the resources to be able to address this problem. And as you all know, the price of a construction project has skyrocketed recently under the Biden administration. Everything is going up. Interest rates are going up. And so these rural communities that need the financing to do these projects, they're not available anymore. Those dollars go less far. And so we've got to address this issue. We've got to stop the inflation that the Biden administration has caused. You know, we look around, we look at people not having running water. We look at a wide open southern border. We look at boys using the girls' bathroom. This is crazy. We're looking at a socialist country, and if we continue to allow Nancy Pelosi and the woke left continue down this path, we won't have a country anymore. We've got to stand up and fight for our country, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you very much. I didn't know that bathroom gender affected water access. Mr. Roberts, we're going to mix up the order. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I think I probably tricked my audio person there.
The simple answer is to get the government out of our business. It goes back to local communities apply for those grants, and those grants are hard to come by because they have to hire somebody to go out, look for the grants, administer their grants, which now is costing the cities and the counties more money by going and trying to find these grants. If we can cut out all the overburdensome regulations on these grants and allow the municipalities to come in, grab the grants, and do what they need to instead of the feds putting the grants out there and tying regulations to them. It is simple. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. When the government gets over-regulating, they don't know what they're doing. Local communities know exactly what they need to do with the federal dollars, so if we could just pull back those regulations and allow the local communities to do what they need to with the grant dollars, you could solve that problem overnight.
Great, thank you very much. I look forward to it solved. Mr. Quinn, we're going to go to you next. 60 seconds, same question.
Thank you. The next congressman that goes to D.C. needs to realize how important the assets of Congressional District 2 are. One of those being the water that goes from southeast Oklahoma all the way to the northeast, whether it's lakes, whether it's the power that's generated from it, or whether it's just the fact that it's clean water. We will never be able to use those water resources to the maximum ability that we have until we stop the spending in D.C. Tom Coburn made a living of pointing out all of the problems of wasteful spending for us to be able to make sure that these small towns, these rural communities, have the water capacity to make sure that it's sanitized, to make sure that it goes out to the people that are in need of that water resource. Until we stop the wasteful spending in D.C., those things will never be able to be done. We've got to have a balanced budget amendment. We cannot continue to spend $30 trillion and growing as we are now and solve the water needs that are so precious to us in this state, in this district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Snowfire, going to go to you next. 60 seconds, same question.
Well, I think the issue of having problems with this state's water needs is something that state legislators should have already addressed. They've already had tons of ARPA funds come to their desk, but yet they never appropriated any of the funds to fix the water issues in this state. That's something that I've tried to address while serving on the Cherokee Nation Council. I've worked with one of the local water boards that have a need in their district to try to fix one of their water towers. So it's about rolling up your sleeves, working with your local citizens in your water districts in your side of your district and trying to solve that issue. And that's something that I've done while serving on the council. That's something that I'll do while serving in the United States Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, 60 seconds to you, same question.
We have to stop the government overreach. Government's got to be shrunk back down. We've got to get them out of people's lives. Prop up the state governments. That's where the money should go. Cut the strings, let them handle it. That's where your water comes from. What I would do in Congress is work with my local politicians, my district, my county commissioners and stuff, and see what they need to help with their pipes, the aquifers, and everything else underwater. It's time that we go back up there and show them that the representatives actually support the civilians and the other local politicians out here. Try to get them help that they need to control our water system and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teehee. 60 seconds to you. Same question about water quality and access.
I'm not sure exactly where you were at, but I know I was at a forum last week in Pushmataha, and they had that very crisis going on. They were within days of run out of water. Being a political outsider, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I know that one thing that in the United States, we should not have a water issue anywhere, especially here in Oklahoma with the water we have. So whether it's state or federal, we have to do what it takes to get them the money to get that to where that's not an issue in Oklahoma.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parker, 60 seconds to you, same question.
So I actually handle this issue somewhat on a daily basis. We're talking about rural water communities. We had an infrastructure bill that passed through Congress. essentially authorized almost $2 trillion worth of spending. And unfortunately, that infrastructure bill did not contain a lot of what we would consider to be traditional infrastructure, whether it was roads, bridges, broadband, electricity, and of course, water. Now, there is a finite number or finite amount of funds within this plan, which I did not support at all. However, it has passed, and we are going to need a strong congressman that is going to be able to push letters of support for rural water communities that are pushing for any of this funding, whether it be grant or competitive application as well. Without that, we're not going to have any of this infrastructure be able to be rebuilt or modernized, and we're going to have more rural communities underserved or unserved by utility quality water. So we need a strong voice in Congress to help stand up and bring as much of that money back here to support our state infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Bennett, same question to you. Is enough attention being paid to water access? What should be done?
So first and foremost, it's been said already, but government's not the answer. Government is the problem, especially big government. Outside of the 18 enumerable powers, the federal government does not have any power or say-so, or should not, and no reach into the state. So what I mean by that in this particular instance is for the water resources and the infrastructure to be taken care of at the local level. Now, the congressman should and can support what they're doing at the local level. For instance, instead of sending $40 billion over to Ukraine where it's being wasted and not used for what it's supposed to do, maybe in that instance you should take that money back and sink that into the local communities instead of wasting our taxpayer dollars. Or maybe at the local community, support them whenever they come and say, well, we need a new bond issue or a new sales tax to build a baseball park or something like that. How about we encourage them at the local level to focus on the infrastructure at the local level and use those taxes to fix the things at the local level, and quit looking at the federal government to fix everything, because they are the problem, not the solution.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go real quick. Mr. Snowfire, you said that the ARPA committee at the legislature hadn't done anything on water issues. Representative Fricks, Senator Quinn, Representative Roberts, you don't have to stand up. It's going to be real quick, 15 seconds. Anybody want to talk about what is going on with that ARPA money in terms of the water? Either of you? There's 15 seconds gone. There you go.
Well, Trace, we had set up a committee of House and Senate members going through those ARPA dollars, working with the governor to actually get one-time projects such as those accomplished for the state of Oklahoma. And it is an effort put on by the legislature.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and go on. Mr. Cooper.
We're going to switch things up a little bit. This is going to be a raise your hand question. So we're going to talk about foreign policy right now. The Russian invasion of Ukraine continues 4 months after it started. The chief of NATO said recently that the war could go on for years. 47,000 people are dead. 15 million people are displaced. The question is this: should the U.S. engage militarily with airstrikes and boots on the ground? Raise your hand if you believe that should happen or happen anytime soon.
Crickets. Okay.
Nobody has raised their hand.
Okay. I guess
let's start with Mr. Roberts. Tell us why you think the U.S. should not get involved.
Because it's not our issue. We've got issues here with inflation and issues with our veterans and our military that we need to be taking care of right now. The president, a couple of years ago, President Trump was exactly right. NATO needs to stand up, and they need to put their fair share of the resources into what's going on across the European theater. UN needs to step in. It's not America's problem to be the one to stand out in front of everything. We've got problems on our home front that we have got to take care of right now and let everybody else stand up and help us. We can't be the leader in everything.
Okay, thank you. We'll do 45 seconds for these. Mr. Quinn, you're next.
First and foremost, we missed the opportunity when you did not have a leader of the free nation, the United States of America. Biden missed his opportunity. Trump would not have missed his opportunity. Putin would have never went into Ukraine because they would have been too afraid of what would have happened. Had Biden have stood up in the beginning, not a dime would have had to been wasted. But here's the thing. Nobody knows where this conflict is going. And we say that we don't want to put any more money on it. What happens when they shut off the wheat? What happens when they shut off the supplies that other members of this world and this country needs? What happens when it starts affecting that food supply? Is that when we go in? So we have to make sure that we don't
You can finish your thought.
We have to make sure that we say that we're not going to spend another dime. We don't want to spend another dime. We need to make sure that we, in the beginning, should have taken care of things when we had the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, let's throw this open just around the group. Whoever wants to go next, if you haven't spoken already, you can have 45 seconds if you want. I hear people talking about inflation, and if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not an economist, but I think the war in Ukraine is affecting global inflation. That's what I hear and reading on the internet. So if that's such a problem, how long do we allow this to go on? Anybody who hadn't talked yet, 45 seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Snowfire.
I think Donald Trump was right that we got to make NATO start pulling their own weight in their own countries that are over there. But when you talk about the influence that Russia has, we have to make America energy independent again. And we can drill and start selling our oil to European countries so that way they're not buying and helping out Russia wage war on Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Go ahead, sir.
All right. How do we address inflation globally? You stop spending and you lower the tax burden on the public. The best government that you can afford is the one that's least involved in your life. That's how you do it. The American public should be at work and not paying the ransom amount of taxes. Again, I'm going to come back to the wheat example. If you're paying so much at the pump, and I mean you're getting squeezed at the pump on your oil, and you're getting squeezed at the grocery store, and you're getting squeezed when you work a job on your taxes, all you're going to see is people work less, and your inflation and your economy fail.
Thank you very much. I'm going to change this around just a little bit. Let's say we're nearly 2 years from now, and you're elected and you're running for re-election again in Oklahoma, and this conflict is still going on between Russia and Ukraine. At that point, is there any need for the U.S. to do more in terms of, military efforts? Mr. Bennett.
I'd love to answer that question. So first and foremost, we don't belong in Ukraine whatsoever. If you've ever been to war, or your family or friends have ever been to war, the last thing you want them to do is go spend blood, treasure, and tears in some foreign land that is just as criminal as Russia, its neighbor Russia. Zelensky is not a hero, he's a criminal. And he needs to be outed just like Putin does. They're laundering money. Our own U.S. government is using Ukraine to launder money. They've done it in the past, they've been caught, and any time the communist Democrats, the weak-kneed rhino Republicans, and the communist media are saying, look over here at what's going on in Ukraine, let's send them money. You better start looking over here because they're doing something else. These are the things that we need to consider. There's not anyone right now in our federal government that's actually paying attention to what's going on, national security-wise. That is a national security interest we don't have any business in Ukraine right now or 2 years from now.
Mr. Bennett, thank you. I wanted to expand on this just a little bit. Congress approved $40 billion in aid for Ukraine. Congressman Mark Wade Mullen, who is in Congressional District 2, he voted for the aid. Congressman Kevin Hern over in Tulsa voted against the aid. With a raise of hands, would you have voted for the aid?
Was it 40 million or 40?
40 billion, excuse me. I misspoke.
Okay. Nobody would have voted for it. Mr. Barker, you look like you had one more thing. We'll end with you on this question. You have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so I think that obviously if this conflict is still going on in 2 years' time, the answer is still going to be no, because we will still be combating inflationary effects here in the States. This is something that we're going to have to be fighting now and for the foreseeable future. We need to start prioritizing Americans' needs rather than shipping more and more American dollars in foreign aid to nations that historically may have burnt the American flag or chanted death to America. We have to start prioritizing America's needs, and we need to prioritize the things that are affecting every single one of us, regardless of your location within the country, race, age, gender orientation, whatever the case may be. Every single one of you has a checking account and has to put gas in your car. This is something that we need to address immediately.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. Mr. Fricks, it's for you. We're going to go back to domestic policy. In the legislature, where I see you often when I'm up there, you ran bills that authorized the first cost of living adjustment for the pensions of retired state employees, teachers, and public safety professionals in about 12 years. But about 12 years from now, the Federal Social Security Trust Fund is expected to potentially become insolvent, meaning millions of seniors could lose some form of their benefits. what does Congress need to do on the topic of Social Security, and would you be open to raising the tax cap so that income above $142,000 a year is taxed to support Social Security?
Thank you for that question. First, let me take the COLA piece of it. I'm proud of the work I was able to do in the legislature to give our first responders the first pay raise they had received in over 12 years, and I think that was important work. We did it while keeping the pension solvent. As we move and look at what's happening at the federal level right now, one of the things that we do really good in Oklahoma is we pass a budget every year, a balanced budget. We have a constitutional amendment that requires us to pass a balanced budget. We haven't passed a budget since the 90s at the federal level. We've got to, first and foremost, be able to pass a balanced budget. We can't just keep increasing taxes to pay for it, and we've got to make investments into that Social Security fund through a balanced budget. We've done that in Oklahoma through our pension systems. Now our pensions are more solvent than they've ever been. We've got to do the same thing at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go 45 seconds on these answers. Mr. Johnson, next to you.
We've got to stop all the wasteful spending that goes along with Congress. We've got to start cutting the ties, shrinking the government down, and start taking care of American citizens again. We've got to, a tax hike is not what we need. We need to break down the government and reduce spending our money overseas on stupid programs, bring it back and take care of American citizens from now on. This is what we need as far as the citizens of this country elect us to a position to go up there and do a job. Stop stealing our money. Stop doing your job. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Now, I was texting Mr. Cooper, never do that when you're supposed to be running a debate. Mr. Fricks, you said no on raising that tax cap, is that correct? And Mr. Johnson, you said no also. Same question, Mr. Snowfire. What do we need to do? Are you in favor of raising that tax cap?
No.
Okay, then what do we need to do?
Well, first thing we got to do is we got to get some trust back in to our American citizens, back to the federal government. That's what the Social Security system is. It is a trust benefit. It is whether or not the citizens trust their American government with their funds. And right now we can see that they don't do that if you look at what happened in January 6th. So it's about making sure that we start holding our government officials accountable. And right now, as my track record has shown, my citizens have been holding me accountable, and I've been representing them well, serving on the Cherokee Nation Council, being the only conservative voice there against a liberal agenda administration. And if you send me to D.C., you're going to have someone there that's going to be able to be held accountable again, and I don't know if I could say the same about everybody else. Appreciate it.
Mr. Snowfire, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Roberts for this question.
Thank you. As far as the COLA, it was the work that Chairman Treasurer Randy McDaniel had put in, and myself as Vice Chairman of that committee, that allowed that COLA to actually happen years ago, the work up front. Absolutely not on raising the cap. What needs to be done is a committee needs to be set up to look at this as far as requirements of age, work, you name it, just a committee that's actually going to look at all the issues, dive into the work that needs to be done here to fix the problem instead of just kicking the can down the road here, because what keeps happening is Congress just keeps looking at raising the tax from 7.3 to 8.7. That needs to stop. We just need to look and work and find out what's actually going to accomplish the Social Security issues.
Real quick, one of the things you mentioned, though, is potentially changing the age limit, right? Are you saying that, we need to look at making it another 3 years before someone can qualify for Social Security?
I think everything needs to be on the table when it comes to any issues that's facing America right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Quinn.
Can I get a clarification on the question, if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. You just want me to repeat it again?
Please.
So the Social Security Trust Fund is constantly projected to potentially be running out of money. It fluctuates from year to year sometimes, but we're looking at the next 10 to 15 years potentially. So currently, taxes are capped. The tax rate is capped. The tax implementation is capped. Look what happens when you put me answering the question at $142,000 a year for folks, meaning they don't pay any Social Security taxes on anything above that, give or take. So do you support raising that a little bit, or what else do we need to do to make sure the Social Security program is solid?
I do not support raising the cap. Why is it that we use the money out of Social Security for other things? Why is it that we get no return for the money that's in Social Security? That's supposed to be, you've heard the term, a lockbox. There's lots of things I think that we ought to look at to make sure that we are maximizing whatever dollars are coming in for a specific purpose, that it's used for that specific purpose. But again, we have an outrageous spending habit. We have people that are trying to please different groups to make sure that they are buying votes for the next election cycle. But if you're not worried about the next election cycle, you can make those tough decisions. And I'd be one of those that would be willing to make the difficult decisions regardless of when the next election cycle comes up.
Mr. Quinn, thank you. Mr. Schiller.
You know, as a business owner, I know how important it is to have a balanced budget. And that we, as a country, no one talks about having a balanced budget. We need to have a balanced budget in Washington. We need to eliminate wasteful spending. We do not need to increase taxes. We need to bring our jobs and our manufacturing home and increase the number of people in the workforce to compensate for that. Thank you.
Mr. T.
My police department has a $6 million budget, and we live within that every year. We can't spend over. It's not going to run out. You have to quit the wasteful spending. That's the problem. It's failed leadership in Washington, D.C. that is spending money everywhere else. We could start it with $40 billion. We could add that to it to start with. But there's got to be something, and everything's got to be on the table as far as opportunities, but I would not agree to raising the limit.
Thank you. Mr. Barker.
No, absolutely not on raising the limit. I'm tired of the solution every time that we run into an issue of insolvency that we're going to raise taxes on those that make more money. But we're going to have to take a look at this system itself. And I think age is going to be one of the first things to start to address. Individuals' age expectation or life expectancy is far increased from where it has since we started this program itself. But the other largest is we're going to have to take a look at Social Security disability. This is something that Social Security was never originally designed to be able to handle. And we're looking at this year's national budget with the expectation that Social Security disability spending may exceed $1.2 trillion. I mean, this is almost 25% of our national budget that is going to an implementation that was never originally designed for Social Security itself. And we ask ourselves why on earth it's going insolvent. It needs to be capped, and it needs to be cut.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, so I agree with the rest of it. We should never be raising taxes or even talking about raising taxes. That's the government's answer to everything. We need more money, let's just raise taxes. Congress needs to be held accountable. We've got over a $31 trillion debt today, and that's probably one of the greatest national security threats that we face in America today. And they're doing it off the backs. They're spending money out of Social Security funds, spending the money of our elderly, those that have paid into that system with the promise that we will give this back to you so you can live your latter years with a little bit of money. That's ridiculous. What we should do is go back in and stop Congress from raiding that fund every time they need money. And we should find them every time that they do and then stick that money back in there for the Social Security beneficiaries. How about we allow the Social Security beneficiaries to invest their own money? I'll stop paying Social Security tax today if they'll let me take that money and invest it myself, because I can make a lot more money that way than we can trusting the government.
Mr. Bennett, thank you. Let's finish with Mr. Derby.
Thank you for the question. I actually have some history with this here within the state of Oklahoma. We went from when I first was elected, the teacher pension and the fire pension and the police pension were 40% funded. We went from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. You want to fast forward to this year, and they're all 100% funded, which allows for the COLAs and things of that nature for them to raid into the purpose of the fund. That's something that we need to have a serious conversation with people at the federal level to make a balanced budget amendment, because you have to do that with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. You have to allow Social Security to be like a 401k system, and then you have to have Medicare and Medicaid simply become to, I really hate the 45 seconds, by the way, become a defined benefit or defined contribution as opposed to a defined benefit, and that way you have the money left over so it never becomes insolvent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. I'm going to go to the last question of this round. We're going to start with you, Senator Quinn. This April, the legislature approved HB 4455 to create a rebate program that could pay up to $800 million to a little company called Panasonic if they select Oklahoma's Mid-America Industrial Park in Pryor as the location for a new battery plant. It'll be a lot of jobs, a lot of investment. The money will not be given unless the company selects Oklahoma and hits a series of investment and job benchmarks. Representative Roberts, you voted in favor of this bill. Representative Fricks, you voted against it. Senator Quinn, you were absent and did not vote. So, Senator, where were you on April 21st instead of the Capitol, and what would you have voted if you'd been in that Senate that day?
Thanks for that personal question, Trace. I really appreciate that.
I know you three gentlemen pretty well, so let's go.
The truth of it is that once we entered the race, we had to start planning out each and every activity that we had. You never know what bill is going to come up, for a long period of time. Some of those come up rather quickly. Some of them are planned out ahead of time. We had commitments that we made in the district, and that's the obligation that I had. I made an effort to call back to make sure that the votes were there. I was going to drive back the 3 hours necessary to accomplish that task. I was guaranteed that the votes were there. So that's where I was at. My stance on this piece of legislation, or any stance on legislation that has some type of a... Can we continue?
Yeah, no, please. I want to know yes or no. Were you for it?
It takes longer than to say I'm for it or against it. I want to make sure that if I'm taking a tax dollar from you, I want there to be some type of return on that investment. I want to make sure that the things that says that you're going to get that tax dollar, that all of those things are met to where that we're building a level of truth built into any of these tax incentives or tax rebates or tax exemptions, because I have fought against exemptions when it said that it was only going to cost $2 to $3 million and wound up costing us almost $2 billion.
So for it or against it? You would have
in
been
this particular case, based off of the knowledge that I had at the time, I would have supported this piece of legislation. Now, if things have changed, which I'm understanding that that's possible, had things changed, then that might have been a different story. But on that particular day, I would have voted for it.
Thank you, Senator. Now, Representative Fricks, he said he voted yes. Representative Roberts voted yes. You voted no. Why?
Well, thank you for that question. First, let me say I always support economic development and bringing more jobs to the 2nd Congressional District and bringing more jobs here to Oklahoma. But I have to look and do my due diligence to the people that elected me. We received that bill just hours, maybe about an hour before we were required to vote on it. I didn't have a chance, and I don't think anybody would have had a chance to thoroughly vet that bill like I felt like I needed to, and so I had to vote no. I also didn't feel like they had the right accountability and oversight put into that bill. Those are our tax dollars, hard-earned dollars that we give to the state of Oklahoma. I want to make sure that we invest those wisely. It's not because I'm against economic development, but it's because I wanted the proper oversight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Roberts. You voted for it. Why did you vote yes?
I voted yes just because the lockbox, because the legislature had worked from the start of session to the moment we took the vote on that. So each one of us had an opportunity to have a voice in that piece of legislation and make sure the locks were in there to protect the taxpayer dollars, and they were. As a member of leadership and as a member of the floor team, I seen what was there. It was a good piece of legislation, especially for rural Oklahoma. We don't have jobs in southeastern Oklahoma, very sparse amounts of jobs. So economic development is critical for the 2nd Congressional District, and I'll support any time, especially if it's protecting taxpayer dollars, such as this piece of legislation. The way I looked at that piece of legislation, it was an escrow account set up to a certain degree to where that company had to invest in the state of Oklahoma before they ever got a single dollar of taxpayer money.
Thank you very much. Hands for the other 7 candidates who weren't in the legislature. Would you have supported that bill? Was it a good idea or a bad idea? Good idea. Raise your hand. Nobody. Okay. 30 seconds to anybody who wants to say why they would have been opposed to it. Mr. Johnson.
I went to Meigs County and spoke to the people, and every one of them said, you know what, some of us for it, some of us against it. Why don't they put the vote of the people? That's exactly what needs to happen. Those people didn't want it because of the chemicals that could go in the ground and everything. So what I think is it should have been left up to the people to vote on it. And then if it passed, it passed. If it survived, it survived. If it didn't, but at least the people got to vote on it. That's our option. That's what we should be able to do. Vote on stuff in our community.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? 30 seconds. Mr. Teehee.
I don't know how I would have voted because I didn't see the particulars about it. The shame of it is that the federal government has got us to the point to where we have to compete state to state, city to city for these things to come in the first place. It should be something where everybody has an opportunity to have it and not have to compete to where we have to. It's who pays the most money, whether it's Kansas or Oklahoma, and that's what determines where these big companies go to.
Thank you. Anybody else? 30 seconds. Mr. Bennett.
So just like Mr. Johnson, I went to Meigs County and talked to them about it as well. They overwhelmingly did not want it. They actually did a recall, and they're doing a vote, and overwhelmingly they're saying we don't want this in our community. They're forgetting about the TIFs, the tax incentives in all district that they're setting up, which actually takes money away from the local community. The local community has said, why aren't they reinvesting in our businesses and helping us build up our businesses? This is just another tax grab that the government is giving to someone else to take away from our citizens, and it should have never been done.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? I see somebody standing up. Mr. Derby.
Thank you. So it's going to be a no for me on this, similar to like what we did with the wind, when it was promised to be $4 million and ended up being $2 billion in tax credits because of all the nonsense that's in the fine details. And then you go to Mays County, and then all those individuals and citizens of CD2 in Mays County were worried about, where's everybody going to live? There's not enough housing in Mays County. There's not enough water in Mays County. There's not enough infrastructure for Mays County. There's not enough school districts in Mays County to handle the influx of employees for this particular Panasonic. Is right, Panasonic?
I don't think they want me to say it, but I said it, so yes.
Okay, fair enough. And so that, at the end of the day, if you got a representative for CD2, we need to represent everybody and all their concerns, and that's what you'll get from me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barker, Mr. Schiller, Mr. Snowfire. Anybody? Mr. Snowfire.
Obviously, there were some questions about Panasonic Canoe, what they were doing and who they were backed by. A lot of people had questions about being backed by China, and I think that's something that the citizens there, when I was meeting them, absolutely brought forward to my attention. So it was a pleasure being up there speaking to them, and absolutely I would have been standing with the constituents there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barker?
I think that we have to have a discussion about tax incentives when we have these projects come in. I mean, we start looking at tax subsidies. It's principally why I would probably be standing up to this. Now, that being said, I'm not against economic development. Being from Miami, seeing what happened whenever the B.F. Goodrich plant closed, I mean, it can decimate parts of this state and parts of this district itself. Now, looking forward as this role and as a federal lawmaker itself, this is not something that I would get involved in. I think that this is a county or community decision. We can see how this can get off the rails when you look at AOC in New York. Whenever she opposed Amazon coming in, they lost out on so many jobs on this. But whenever it comes to tax subsidies like this, I can't support it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schiller, last but not least, 30 seconds.
Without knowing all the specifics of it, I do believe that, hearing what I've heard, that I would be against it also. But we do need to bring manufacturing here. We need to bring jobs here, but we need to make it good investments. If we're going to take that tax dollars and invest them, we need to get a return on that investment.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Schiller. Round of applause time. That's the end of round one. We're strapped in. We're 2 minutes ahead of my schedule. Amazing. Good work, guys. Thank you very much. Our second round is called Schrodinger's Reservation Theory. I think that's funny. Google Schrodinger's cat if you don't understand what I mean. Candidates are going to have 60 seconds to answer questions in this round. I'm quickly going to try to provide some background. Mr. Cooper, take a nap. Mr. Wood, you can zoom in on me. In July 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Mcgregor v. Oklahoma that for the purposes of the Major Crimes Act, the historic Mvskoke Nation Reservation had not been disestablished by Congress, meaning its 3.2 million acres still exist as an Indian country reservation under 18 U.S.C. 1151A. Then an Oklahoma appellate court cited the SCOTUS decision to affirm the historic reservations of the Cherokee Nation, the Chickasaw Nation, Choctaw Nation, Seminole Nation, and Quapaw Nation. Immediately, this meant only the federal government and those tribes, not the state of Oklahoma and its counties, had jurisdiction to prosecute violent crimes and major property crimes in eastern Oklahoma, including most of the Tulsa area and most of the Bartlesville area. Governor Kevin Stitt has pushed back and has tried to regain criminal jurisdiction for the state. Tribal leaders, many have emphasized the importance of their sovereignty. In the meantime, lawsuits are underway to attempt to affirm the reservation's existence regarding civil laws. That's the Schrodinger's part, right? Such as mining regulation and taxation authority. There's a lot of preface here for this round of questions, but Jonathan, this is an important and complicated topic. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's do it. So our first question is for Mr. Teehee. So we hear Governor Stitt talk about chaos in eastern Oklahoma owing to the Mcgregor decision, and we hear tribal leaders say the issues have been exaggerated for political purposes. So our question is this: as police chief in Mvskoke, what has been the impact of the Mcgregor decision on your job and in your community?
The Mcgregor decision has been difficult. The biggest issue is the fact that we have victims who aren't being taken care of. Property crimes specifically, it's something that we, local, state, tribal, federal, have all got to figure out a way to work together. The sovereignty issue is there, but the bottom line is that we have to have the victims that are getting justice. That's the bottom line, and we have to work that however that is, or whatever process it is, we've got to get our victims justice.
Okay, thank you. We know that not all of you have been in law enforcement. Some of you have been. You've mentioned that. But I'm going to do a follow-up. What has the impact been in your own local communities? Let's start with Mr. Derby.
Catching you off guard. Congress will do that.
No kidding. I appreciate it. So in regards to McGirt, actually I was down in Stigler this past weekend and actually talked to the sheriff. And so I actually had a long conversation with him. So former law enforcement, worked in the crime lab, and he and I had a long conversation. McGirt has been catastrophic for that particular county, and the fact that he doesn't understand or know how to prosecute perpetrators, because he can arrest somebody and it can be a tribal member, and then 2 hours later they're out back on the street for what is a felony for federal is a misdemeanor in the tribal court, and 2 hours later they're back out on the street. The fact of the matter is when it comes to justice, it needs to be blind. There has to be restitution for the victim, and there has to be punishment for the perpetrator. I don't care if they're purple or if they're 17,000 feet tall or 2 inches tall. It doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, justice needs to be blind, and both of those things on the scale has to be adjudicated.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Fricks.
Well, we definitely have to have clarity on the McGirt decision. It's created a lot of challenges for us. We've got to be able to sit down with the tribal leaders and make sure that all 4 million Oklahomans are protected. We've got to sit down with our law enforcement partners and come to the table and come up with a solution. Right now, this McGirt decision is almost kind of like a bad divorce. The only people winning this are the attorneys. The attorneys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars. We've got to come back to the table and find real solutions to protect all 4 million Oklahomans.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
This goes back to what I was saying a while ago. Our politicians got to stop playing with people's lives. They got to realize that this is about the American people and not any of us on this stage. We have got to get back up here. They have got to get in a room and solve this out. We had a cooperating individual agreement when I worked for the sheriff's office, and it worked out perfect. And all of us got along great. We did our jobs. We got to go back to that. Get these people in a room. Start doing your jobs. Quit having an ego, and let's get the people protected like we're supposed to.
Thank you, Mr. Snowfire. You've been talking about this a little bit with the Cherokee Nation. Your perspective on this?
It's going to be hard to try to dive into this in 45 seconds. However,
Well, you got 60. You got 60. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Big
Great.
finish.
A little bit longer, 15 more seconds. But one of the big issues is that tribal leaders and state leaders are using it as political warfare to attack one another. We know that it's going to take federal congressional action to solve this issue, and so I've dealt with the case law on a regular basis. I have sat down with tribal chiefs. I've got respect from them. I've sat down with Governor Stitt. I've sat down with the current Attorney General, John O'Connor. I both have support from them in solving this issue. They're looking to me to be the problem solver in McGirt. If I'm not in the room to be able to be the lead negotiator between both state leaders and tribal leaders, our citizens are going to continue to pay the price. But ultimately, the federal government is the backstop, and that backstop is Congress, and you're going to need someone like me there to solve that. That's the reason why I've had so much trust from both parties. We do have the rogue agenda administration over at Cherokee Nation. We call them the problem child. They don't want to sit down because they're in two-step with Joe Biden and his administration, trying to bring that right here to the most conservative state in Oklahoma. They're trying to put illegal abortion clinics right here on the reservations. We don't want to see that, and that's why I can speak on behalf of all the tribal representatives that I've sat down with and on the state of trying to find a negotiation and finding a solution. That's the reason why I have their support. Appreciate it.
I want to give you 15 more seconds. You just said that the Cherokee Nation and Chief Hoskin are trying to put abortion clinics in the Cherokee Nation for the state of Oklahoma?
Absolutely. You know, you have to mirror the state law in order to make congruency of the law. And they've tried to stop me from bringing abortion law to the tribal council by placing new rules and procedures in there. Instead of having one council member who can bring it forward as a sponsor, they've changed that to 5, which has effectively made, there's no justice for our citizens out there to have representation anymore.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roberts, I think next to you, 60 seconds. What's been the impact of the McGregor decision in
Thank
your
you.
area?
What was just said, I think it's an Oklahoma problem. We need to stop looking to Washington, D.C. to fix all of our issues. In the state of Oklahoma, we know how to solve the problems. Our tribal leaders and the governor and the AG need to all sit down. They need to work the issues out. And then as your next congressman, I'll be there to do what needs to be done with their advice. Because Oklahomans fix Oklahoman problems. Looking to Washington, D.C. to fix problems, we all know how that actually works out. We've seen the PPP loans and everything else. D.C. doesn't know how to fix problems. They cause problems. It's an Oklahoma problem that we need to actually fix here with leaders sitting together and having a conversation to protect Oklahomans.
All right, Mr. Quinn, you're next.
I've talked to a number of law enforcement individuals. I've talked to multiple DAs. And the response that I've gotten from them is that it's unfair for tribal members and it's unfair for non-tribal members. There's lots of injustices happening to both sets of people. I don't believe for 1 minute that it can be resolved without the help of the federal government, the state government, and the tribal leaders. We're going to have to bring that together because what is happening is people are being hurt because people are fussing and fighting. If we care about those people, whether it's tribal or non-tribal, like we say we will come to the table. And we'll say that we want what's best for Oklahoma. Oklahoma will never achieve the excellence or the success that is afforded to it and has the ability to attain unless we come together and work out a solution for the betterment of all of those involved.
Thank you. Mr. Schiller, what's been the impact in your community?
So as a political outsider and as a business owner, we see decisions made in Washington that affect our daily lives here in Oklahoma, and that's an understatement with this decision. But I'm a firm believer that the state leaders and the tribal leaders have to sit down and find a workable solution. That workable solution has to ensure the safety of our citizens and then justice for those that commit crimes. I'm a problem solver, and what this problem needs, it needs leaders to roll up their sleeves and come to the table and find that workable solution.
Thank you, Mr. Barker.
So I'm the only candidate on this stage that actually manages the law enforcement department, fire, and EMS for one of these 6 Mcgregor tribes right now. This is an issue that I wrestle with every single day, and it has not been without its growing pains, but I do see this as a resolvable problem. I think as time has gone on, there has certainly been a lot of accusations or rhetoric that we have tribal nations and leadership trying to set up havens for abortion or putting pedophiles or rapists back out on the street, and none of this is true. Absolutely not. It takes some personal offense to it as being one of the people that actually helps manage these issues. Now, our tribal nation had the benefit of being able to watch the Mcgregor tribe for at least a year, be able to figure out what its trials and errors were, and as a conservative tribal government, we were able to spring into action immediately, co-op, and cross-deputize all local law enforcement. It has actually enhanced our public safety in our region of the state. Now, that being said, we're quite a bit smaller than Cherokee Nation, Choctaw, Chickasaw, but I believe that with concerned and sensible collective efforts between tribal leadership in the state that we can get there. But as of right now, this is a struggle over egos.
Struggle over egos? Okay, thank you. Mr. Bennett.
So if you go to johnbennettforcongress.com, I did a detailed video about the Mcgregor decision and spelling out all the issues. The criminal issue is a very serious issue. However, it's bigger than that. We need to think about these things. We need to think about private property rights. The average home or business owner can get a property tax bill from the tribes on top of the taxes they already pay the county. And at the same time, the tribes can regulate the property owner's ability to improve, alter, or expand the structures on the property, whether you're a tribal member or not. This represents taxation without representation. I mean, who's going to regulate Oklahoma business? I mean, who owns the oil and gas in the grounds? Who owns the water rights in Oklahoma? Who has the authority to tax? Who pays that tax, tribal or non-tribal? And if they do or don't, what services are based off the tax you do pay or you do not pay? I mean, this has a great potential to limit or reduce public service going to all citizens. I mean, furthermore, the Supreme Court told us exactly how to fix it. And on page 36 through 42 of the court's opinion, they stated in part, Congress remains free to supplement its statutory directions about the lands in question at any time. They need to go in and deestablish the Mvskoke Creek Nation and put things back the way they were prior to that.
And we're going to follow up to that in just a second. Mr. T wants a quick rebuttal for his part.
There we go. Sorry. I typically don't like to rebut, but I want on one that is, I know as a fact. When you talk about that there was no rapist walking the street, I know for a fact that there is a rapist walking the street because of McGirt. I worked a serial rape case in the 1990s, and because of McGirt, and only McGirt, he is walking the streets today.
Mr. Barker, 15 seconds to you.
Well, we'll roll the tape back, but I think the statement was that tribal nations and leadership are not trying to put rapists out on the street. I think there is a heated debate right now as to which prison they will rot under, and that was the statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bennett, you led into our next question. You've said, and you just said it again, that you believe Congress should disestablish the Mvskoke Reservation. I think you said it about the other ones as well, or if that was disestablished, maybe the rest would follow. I'm not sure. But your statement drew a strong rebuke from the Intertribal Council, which called it, quote, shameful and, quote, anti-tribal. You are running to represent all of these tribes in Congress. Why should any of their citizens vote for you with that as a goal?
So first and foremost, I'm running to represent the Oklahomans, all Oklahomans, whether they're in the tribe or not. And for the tribes to come out, socialistic type governments, by the way, which do not recognize our Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments of our Constitution, they don't get those rights on tribal land. Yes, I did say we need to deestablish Mvskoke Creek Nation. Because once we do that, and the Supreme Court says we have the authority, Congress has to do it if we want to fix things. All that would simply do is set us back to the day prior to the Supreme Court making the ruling that they did that caused this whole mess in the first place. And the Court of Criminal Appeals would extend that to all the tribes. We're not taking away sovereignty. What we're doing is setting things right and getting back to the way they were prior to the disastrous McGirt decision. And that's what we need to do to protect all Oklahomans, tribal and non-tribal, because we all lose. It's the casino bosses in the tribal government are the ones that are going to make out in this whole deal, not the tribal citizens and not the citizens of Oklahoma.
Thank you very much. We've got those fact checkers at home. I'm sure Brianna with Frontier is clicking away, Googling things, trying to figure some things out. Mr. Barker, as we've mentioned, you're on the Quapaw Nation's Business Committee, which is the legislative branch, essentially, of the government, which I believe is democratically elected. Okay, just making sure. I'm guessing you oppose disestablishing the reservations. What is your reaction to Mr. Bennett's position?
I think that we're going to have to have a discussion on this. That we have prehistoric, treaty rights that pre-exist the creation of this state itself. Some of which up to 77 years itself. Under Article 6 of this United States Constitution, that is the supreme law of the land. These need to be recognized. We have sovereign rights for these nations that now, at least with the textual interpretation from Neil Gorsuch, the most conservative justice on the bench, and that these rights need to be upheld. So I do not believe that disestablishment is a reasonable or even remotely fair solution moving forward. Our tribes and their participation in our communities here in Oklahoma make us strong, and it's what make us unique, particularly as a state here in the United States. So that needs to be celebrated, it needs to be enhanced, it needs to be strengthened through good, hard work with everybody kind of pointing their sails in the right direction rather than fighting against one another.
Thank you very much. For the other 8 candidates on stage, please raise your hand if you agree with Mr. Bennett that Congress should disestablish the reservations. Anybody? Okay, somebody give me... Mr. Bennett raises his hand for himself. There we go. You raised both hands. It still counts as one. Somebody who... Why are you guys not raising your hands? Why is that too extreme a position? Is it an insulting position? Who wants to go first? Mr. Snowfire.
Ultimately, it's about holding tribal, state, and federal governments accountable in this issue. The Supreme Court laid out a rule of how they could do that. You know, they actually gone into saying that Congress nor the treaties established a reservation, so the Supreme Court did. But they went back and said that Congress has to define that. Right now we have a big gray sector going on, and that's why we have so much inconsistency in the law of the land, and we're also seeing the inconsistency in the civil aspect of the land. And so for the best interests of all Oklahomans, native and non-natives alike, Congress is going to take action and have to take action. And how they go about doing that is going to be the reflection of someone who knows how to work with both tribal leaders and state leaders. And I have had that experience in doing it while serving on the council. I've also had that experience while running for this office. And so it is important to solve this biggest issue with somebody who knows exactly what they're working with.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next? Mr. Fricks.
Thank you. You know, I believe that disestablishing these reservations would kick it right back to the courts because of the tribe's treaty rights. And that's going to get us right back into where we are today. It's going to cause continued uncertainty. The attorneys are going to continue to win. We've got to sit down. I'd rather see us all sit down and come up with real solutions to address this and to protect all Oklahomans.
Mr. Snowfire, I just saw you shake your head when he said that he'd kick it back to the courts. 15 seconds. Is that something you want to correct or rebut?
It's not anything that really needs to be rebutted. I've already said that whenever I said that the treaty rights nor Congress has created a reservation, only the Supreme Court did. Appreciate
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? 60 seconds on this topic. Why we?
Yeah, I would like to chime in again. So I do appreciate Wes and Guy's comments on this, and I'll be more than happy to work with them or their tribes in trying to fix this. The main point is Congress has to fix it, and it can't be kicked down the road. It certainly can't be kicked back to the courts.
You can't work with this if you're going to disestablish it. That's the whole point of sitting down and working with tribal leaders and state leaders. Whenever you're going to say something like that and then come back and say, well, I'd like to sit down and work with you guys. You didn't say you're going to disestablish it.
Well, here's the deal.
And
the only ones working out, the only ones
We've
winning
already
out
seen
here
that they
is
failed
the
to
corrupt
act so
tribal
far.
governments. And we all know this, and everyone's afraid to say it because most up here are taking money from the tribes. What I'm saying is we need to get in here and fix this problem. We can't kick the can down the road. And let me finish.
15 seconds, Mr. Bennett.
We're just kicking the can down the road. And so we'll do this, we'll do that. We need to do something right now because the fallout of what's going to happen, if we don't fix this now, it's going to be very detrimental. And then trying to reverse that is going to be even harder. So we need to take a bold step and just fix it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snowfire. Rebuttal, 15 seconds. Anybody else? Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Why are we not putting political pressure on our politicians to get in here and do something about this? This isn't about the candidates or anything. Get your butt out there and start doing your job. Get in a room, solve this for the American people. That's what we need.
Anybody else? 15 seconds. Mr. Snowfire.
Rebuttal that when Bennett had said that there was setting members that received money from corrupted tribal leaders, and also Bennett's one of those by receiving money from the CFO of the Cherokee Nation businesses where they use their dark money to affect politics.
Anybody else? Mr. Teehee? The police chief says, I'll hold my water. Okay.
Trey, I want to say one more thing.
10 seconds, real quick.
Page 36 of 42. Congress remains free to supplement its statutory directions about the lands in question at any time. Simply reversing the decision will send us right back to the way it was the day prior to Mcgregor. It's not taking any sovereignty.
Okay, we're going to move on. Mr. Cooper, I believe you have the next question for Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, we're going to kind of expand on this a little bit as well. This is for Mr. Roberts first. You're a citizen of the Choctaw Nation. Your wife is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. You've heard the rhetoric and seen the tensions over the last 2 years. Compacts have been ended between the state and the tribes. The Cherokee Nation recently said it would no longer fly the Oklahoma flag at its capital, that it reversed that decision. One of your colleagues in the legislature recently called Governor Kevin Stitt racist on the House floor. Given the economic forces that are the tribal nations, are you concerned this situation is creating a generation's worth of bad blood between tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens?
First off, yes, I am a citizen of the Choctaw Nation. We're stronger as an Oklahoma when we work together. It's as simple as that. We need to stop with the rhetoric and calling each other names and whatever's going on in the world. At the end of the day, you have a bunch of politicians that are just screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs, saying they're going to fight, and that's all they do is they fight with one another. They never actually work. And what it's going to end up taking is it takes individuals to sit down and work for Oklahoma. I stated it. We are stronger when we work together. It is simple as that. So what needs to happen is the rhetoric needs to stop. and both sides, and everybody needs to sit down in a room and fix the issues so Oklahoma can move forward. To answer the question as far as Oklahoma, ridiculous. The state of Oklahoma flag shall fly on this land.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barker, as a member of the Quapaw Nation, your thoughts on the state and the tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens?
Well, we still fly the Oklahoma flag at Quapaw. Now, this is partly because we are completely and totally committed to working with the state government, state leaders. Now, while they may not always be committed to working with us, we stand resolute, trying to come up with a sensible resolution on some of these issues that we are seeing. And I think after the decision itself first came out, there were some understandable stumbles and growing pains, but I think right now is the time for us to be able to band together, because at the end of the day, we have men, women, children, safety effectively at risk. And any of these individuals, particularly bad actors, need to be held accountable. And this can't happen. We continue to have the same problems right now with retention or child protective services. I think that the courts have largely remedied some of this. You've got tribal courts and federal courts being able to pick up a lot of these cases, and as we've seen, starting to investigate and prosecute them as well. But we are going to keep running into these same issues if we don't have state leadership working with us on these retention issues.
All right, Mr. Barker, thank you. Mr. Bennett, are you worried about bad blood between tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens?
No, what I'm worried about is the division that's being caused by the two governments, because no one wants to get in and fix it. And everyone's saying, well, it's their fault, their fault, their fault. We need to get past that and fix it. And the Supreme Court's already told us exactly how to fix it. It doesn't take anyone's sovereignty away. It doesn't take anyone's rights away. Everything just goes back to being the same way that it was. Now, Congress' job is that. The compacts is between the governor of Oklahoma and the tribes, and they need to work that out. But this big problem we're facing with this horrible Mcgregor decision needs to be fixed immediately by Congress before it gets out of hand.
Mr. Derby?
Let's face it, I'm pretty much a straight shooter, and this stuff drives me nuts. The fact of the matter is we're all Oklahomans. I hate the fact that we divide each other into these groups. I'm not a member of any tribe. I don't have tribal blood in me. I never was raised that way, and I just treat people like people. I was raised to love God and love people, take care of people, and that's how it is. I want to go to Washington, D.C. and fix the problems. I want to represent CD2. I've been registered here in CD2 for 10 years when we bought our house in Rogers County. Prior to that, I lived in Tulsa County. But I know for a fact that Mr. Barker just registered in February this year in CD2. I don't understand that. But yet we want to give him our authority to go to Washington, D.C. and represent us. I don't understand that, ladies and gentlemen. How in the world are we going to do that? I can stand up here and say that I'm going to go up to Washington, D.C. and fix Mcgregor, and I see the red sign. But at the end of the day, it takes people with strong backbone and bring everybody into the room and fix the problem with Mcgregor. You got to have the codification of the 9 justices so we don't pack the court. You got to bring all the chiefs into the room and say enough is enough. And you got to have to bring the governor in there and say stop acting like a baby.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Derby, thank you.
Appreciate it. Representative, we'll come back to you, Mr. Barker, and let you rebut that a little bit. Representative Fricks.
As your next congressman, I'm going to fight for all Oklahomans, whether that's tribal or non-tribal, to sit down and come up with real solutions. You know, we have to stop this division. We have to stop this fighting and come to the table and find solutions. I have experience problem solving in the legislature. I've served on the Intertribal Relations Committee, one of just a handful of House members appointed to serve on that committee, and I'm going to continue to do that as your next United States Congressman.
Mr. Johnson?
I think I answered that question a while ago about Mcgregor and how I feel about it.
Just about bad blood between tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens.
Non-tribal citizens. Well, repeat the question one more time, clarify.
Well, I think we're just, are you concerned that, you know, if this goes on and on for years, are we creating a generation where, you know, there's major conflict and resentment among tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens?
Right now, what I don't understand is why it's went on this long. Why do we not have our own politicians up here in solving this problem? Why wasn't they in a room right the day after the court case came out and saying, let's get this worked out for the American people? The only ones getting hurt out here are us. Not the ones going back to their big cushy houses. The American people. Stop it. Go do your job, get in a room, and do what you're supposed to do.
And Mr. Snowfire, if you want to expand on the Cherokee Nation flag controversy, you could do that, or the bad blood between tribal citizens and
Yeah,
tribal
if you look at
citizens.
my lapel pin right here, it's the Oklahoma flag and the American flag. My dad, he went over, he was speaking on behalf of me. He's a full-blooded Cherokee man. He went over to the American flag and kissed it. And the reason why is because that gave him the full American rights of freedom. Right now, the reservations that go on up in the Lakota and the Navajo Indian reservations, they have limited American rights. And if you go there, you can see that those reservations don't work out. That's the reason why my dad is so proud to be an Oklahoman. It's the reason why I'm so proud to be an Oklahoman. But now we have the issue of the Mcgregor decision and making sure that we protect this tribal sovereignty while holding them accountable while we go through this negotiation process. And you have to have an experienced leader who knows the ins and outs of tribal sovereignty, state sovereignty, and the federal government. And that's the reason why I'm running for office.
Thank you.
Mr. Quinn, 60 seconds to you.
The Bible tells us how we're supposed to treat our fellow man. And unless we come to the table with that in mind, what we wind up doing is fighting for what's best for me and fighting for what's best for this person. And at the end of the day, until we have our hearts and our minds set the way that they should be, the two sides are going to be in conflict. You've got one side that are saying derogatory things about another. You have this side saying the same thing. And the battle continues. But we have to examine what it is that the tribal leaders are doing that is in conflict with those that are non-tribal. Those things that are happening to non-tribal members need to make sure that they're addressing things that the tribes feel like that they affect them. But we've been up here for the last several minutes, back and forth and back and forth. We haven't got anything solved. We've got to make sure that we go in with the right mind and with the right heart for our fellow man, and hopefully by that time we can address the issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schiller, 60 seconds to you.
Bottom line is we have to ensure the safety of our citizens. And then we have to make sure that justice is served to those that break the law. Obviously, this is the criminal justice part is a huge issue. And we can't continue to have our state leaders or the tribal leaders just posture. We have got to roll up our sleeves and get them to the table to solve this problem. Whatever role that I need to play in Congress to mediate that or to get that together, I will play that role. But I think the last thing we need is Nancy Pelosi right now deciding what is best for Oklahomans here in Oklahoma.
Thank you. Then Mr. T.
You know, when you talk about the flag situation, I was appalled when that happened, but it gives me a little bit of hope that we have the ability to work through this situation with Mcgregor. Because when the flag situation happened, the Cherokees took that flag down, the uproar was very loud throughout the Cherokee people. So loud to the point that the chief came right back and put the flag up just in a matter of days. So when the Cherokee people speak, they have the ability to get something done. It's going to be up to them to be able to speak to get it done.
Thank you very much. I want to go back, Mr. Barker, 30 seconds to you. I believe Mr. Derby made a reference about your residence is...
Yeah, I'm going to try and understand the planetary leap from McGirt over to my place of registration, but originally registered as Republican in Tulsa, where I graduated high school. I then went on the road, working in oil and gas from patch to patch. Landed in Oklahoma City, where I received my law degree and clerked at the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Then took on my role in Ottawa County, where I work, and live in Delaware County, where I then re-registered to vote. So, family is originally from Miami. We've lived there since 1830, 8th generation resident of the 2nd District. So, what that has to do with who's best qualified to handle McGirt, I have no idea, but it's the most complex legal issue that has maybe faced Oklahoma since statehood, and I'm the only one with a law degree standing on the stage.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cooper, you have the next question. I believe it's a hand raise.
Yeah, so it'll be a hand raise question. And if you agree with it, raise your hand. If not,
Mr. Derby, 15 seconds. You want to read that piece of paper?
Thanks, Trace, because I have it here from the election. It says new registrant, 2/28/2022, and no former information.
Great. Mr. Barker, 10 seconds to you.
I don't understand what you're saying. Yes, I just stood up here and verified that I changed my voter registration to the new location where I live now. I moved there in 2020.
But there's no previous, which would be right here.
Yes, this might be something that you don't know, or maybe the rest of this room doesn't understand, is that whenever the election board recertifies you in a different district, they eliminate your previous voter history. They wipe it from the system. So thank you.
No, not true.
Okay, well, our fact checkers will dive into that. We'll get to the bottom of there's got to be a joke to be made, but we're going to move on.
We're going to do the hand raise question. This is sticks with the tribes. It's the last question involving the tribes. So yesterday was Juneteenth. That's a holiday that functionally recognizes the end of slavery in America. The 5 tribes here in Oklahoma all historically owned African slaves, and the descendants of those people are known as freedmen. Each of the tribes has a different relationship with its freedmen. The Cherokee Nation granted its freedmen full citizenship after losing a court case, but the Seminole, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Mvskoke nations do not grant their freedmen full citizenship and rights. So the question is this: raise your hand if you believe Congress should require those tribes to admit freedmen as full citizens. And none of them.
Nobody. Okay, we're going to keep rolling on down the road. I believe somebody. I'm sorry, you've got a microphone.
Yeah, whenever the Cherokee Nation admitted them in there, they violated their constitution. So they violated their own citizens' rights. That's what they did there. And so whether the tribe wanted to accept them into their citizenship or not, it's self-determination, and the members have to speak up. And so the tribal government, the tribal chief specifically, worked with the Supreme Court and undermined the rights of the people and invalidated their constitutional rights, and then sent it to D.C., where Deb Haaland illegally signed an unratified constitution. So she'd be in violation herself.
Thank you very much. Okay. That's the end of round 2. Thank you very much. Round of applause for these candidates. Doing great. We're 2 minutes behind now. Wow, I don't know how we got 2 minutes behind. Okay, our third and final round is called the hot seat. Turn on the heat warming lamps underneath their chairs, please. Okay. Mr. Cooper, we're going to talk the politics of this race.
Yeah, so first off, we're going to do a hand raise. This is an easy one, though, I promise. If you make the GOP runoff for the general election, will you pledge to debate again in the runoff in the general election? They all agree.
We got everybody on there. That sounds great. Okay, thank you. Debates matter. We'll take note of that. In this round, each candidate will get one question asked to them, and only that candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Jonathan, you've got the first question, and in a turn of events that's opposite of what I just said, it's going to go to both Mr. Schiller and Mr. Derby.
Yes, so this is for both Mr. Derby and Mr. Schiller. We'd like you to both answer the same question. Mr. Derby, you will go first. You seem both pretty well connected in the pharmacist community. There's always big money drama in the pharmaceutical industry. How can Oklahomans trust that you won't be an easy target for influence from Big Pharma in Washington? And are there any policy matters you would abstain from voting on? Mr. Derby, you're first.
And you've got 90 seconds on these questions, gentlemen. That's 45 times 2.
Fantastic. It's 18 times 5.
It's good. I couldn't have done it.
Pharmacy joke. That's easy. This campaign, I don't have any PAC money. I don't have any Big Pharma money. Didn't accept any money. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even get independent pharmacists to join me on this particular endeavor. Because of the fact that Mr. Schiller entered the race before I did. Even though I actually helped the independent pharmacists out here within the state of Oklahoma by reducing the prescription drug costs with House Bill 2100 back in 2014. Took on insurance companies and told them that the pharmacy benefit managers were going to be regulated by the Insurance Commission here within the state of Oklahoma. We actually took them to the Supreme Court. That ruling was upheld, and we were the very first or very few states in the state of the United States to actually regulate a nameless entity and drive our prescription drug costs here within the state of Oklahoma. that laid the foundation for more pieces of legislation here within the state of Oklahoma, and that's the type of leadership you're going to have from me in this United States Congress to drive your prescription drug costs down and to take on the PBMs and the DIR fees so that your prescription drug costs are lower and you see more money in your pocket, and we can kick Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden in the teeth.
All right, Mr. Derby, thank you. Mr. Schiller, same question for you. Haggard Voters Trust, you will not be an easy target for big pharma lobbyists. Are there any policy matters you would abstain from voting on?
Thank you so much for that question. So as a pharmacist and a pharmacy owner, I have seen what big pharma and what big insurance has done to our healthcare system. There are two groups that I will not take any money from, big pharma and big insurance, because I've seen what they've done. I sit across from the counter to patients, and I can't explain to them why their copayment's gone from $25 to $150. I can't explain to them why a vial of insulin, when I got out of pharmacy school, that was $45. The same exact ingredients, the same exact makeup is now $350. That's wrong. We as Americans are subsidizing the rest of the world when it comes to drug costs. You can buy the same thing for $25 in Canada. We wonder what's wrong with our healthcare system and the influence that those industries have in Washington. I will not be bought by special interest groups, by big pharma, or by big insurance. They are one of the major reasons I want to go to Congress to fix our healthcare system so I can protect your right to good quality healthcare and to choose where to get that healthcare. In every city, not just in the big metro areas, because healthcare in the big metro areas seems to be taken care of, but in the rural Oklahoma. What we struggle with in rural Oklahoma is good access to healthcare and getting to that healthcare and getting to choose that. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Trace?
Mr. Bennett, I've got the next question for you. As chairman of the Republican Party, you faced criticism for divisive and what some people might say xenophobic statements you previously made about Muslim Americans. You compared private businesses who have vaccine mandates to something related to the Holocaust, and you criticized Senator James Lankford and U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe for voting to certify the 2020 election results. What do you say to voters who might look at all your comments and wonder if they want someone a little less controversial and more statesmanlike representing them in Congress?
Well, first, it's true. I said all those things. And I also say this, the truth only hurts when it should. If we don't have someone that will stand up and say what's right and fight for those that don't have a voice, then we shouldn't send anybody up there. That's what our people want. They want someone that's going to stand up and fight for them. Why do you think overwhelmingly they elected Donald J. Trump? Because he's told the truth, no matter who come against him, no matter whose feelings got hurt. And I tell you, the truth only hurts if it should. If their feelings were hurt by the truth, because it was all truth, then they're the people I'm talking to. And that's what I'm doing in Congress. If you don't like the truth, then don't ask me. If you don't want me to go up and fight for you and speak the truth and stand and fight, even when the heat gets turned up and everyone else turns against you, then don't send me. Send somebody else. But if you want a fighter, someone's going to tell the truth no matter what, not take money from special interest or anybody else, then send me. If you want the same old that we've been getting, then send somebody else.
Thank you very much. I have the next question for Mr. Quinn. Senator Quinn, we mentioned the cost of living adjustment for retired state employees, teachers, and public safety professionals passed in the legislature in 2020. Of 145 lawmakers who voted on that bill, only 5 voted against it. You were one of those legislators, and while debating against the bill in the Senate, you became emotional and you screamed into the microphone at one point and were calmed down by a colleague. Why did boosting the pension benefits of retired teachers, police officers, and firefighters draw that reaction? Take us back there, and what did that mean to you?
One of the worst things that's happening to us in D.C. is we keep giving benefits away for political reasons. The situation that we've got right now, when I started in the House in 2010, our unfunded liabilities for the retirement system was almost $16 billion. Had actions not been taken previously and since that time to reduce it to about $8 billion, we would be just exactly like D.C. because the previous administrations came in every so often, just happened to be around election time, and they would give these cost of livings to a segment of our population called retirees, whether that's government workers, But what about the people that are not government workers? What about those of you in the audience that worked your entire life for 30 years or 40 years and you retired on $2,000 a month and you live 5 years or 10 years or 20 years and never get a cost of living adjustment, but you pay for it? We went back to the same democratic options of pleasing people for political reasons. We used the same tactics. We went back into the system, the very system that we're trying to make whole. We went back into the system and took out over $800 million. It is this kind of reaction that I will fight against. I fought against it then because I've seen it for 12 years. I made tough decisions that day. I'll make tough decisions today, and I'll make tough decisions tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Jonathan.
All right, this is from Mr. Teehee. I know you've been outspoken in your support for the Second Amendment, but as a law enforcement officer, you see what happens when gang members and other criminals have easy access to weapons. Just recently, 2 men from Mvskoke carried out separate mass shooting events. The U.S. Senate is working on a bipartisan agreement on gun laws that would put more scrutiny on gun buyers under the age of 21. That would put more scrutiny on gun buyers. It would fund mental health and school security programs, and it would support red flag laws where judges can temporarily remove firearms from people deemed a threat to themselves or others. Our question is this: do you believe actions like these are valuable for public safety, or do you oppose any effort to change current gun laws?
Go ahead. Okay. I think it's a fine line between how you do safety. Obviously, there's got to be some things that's fixed. Red flag laws, they're a touchy subject. I mean, not being in there on the tables to know how they're talked about or what the specifics are, we can't take people's rights away from them. I think the focus on that should be with mental health. I've been on the board for 15 years at Green Country Behavioral Health, and I see how that affects even my dad when he come back from Vietnam turning to alcohol. So I see how those different things affect ability for people to act on a day-to-day basis. So I think the focus with regards to this should be on mental health, not on taking gun rights away.
Thank you. Trace?
Thank you. Mr. Fricks, I have the next question for you. Representative Fricks, you were one of the youngest members in the legislature when you were elected to the House in 2016. I guess that from time to time, maybe you still get carded at the liquor store. You're now 28 years old and running for Congress, the youngest person in this race. I was 28 and ambitious once myself, but I also learned a lot when I reached my 30s. How do you convince voters that you have the experience, maturity, and wisdom to serve them in Congress?
Well, I think as we look at everything that's happening in D.C. right now, we need somebody that has the energy and that's ready to fight for our country. I'm young, I'm fearless, I'm ready to fight for us. But I also come with a lot of experience, too. For the last 6 years, I've served in the Oklahoma legislature where I've led on important conservative issues. I've started my own small business, helped continue a family business in Mvskoke. I have that experience, I have that real life experience, and I have the energy, and I'm ready to fight for you in D.C. and fight to take our country back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cooper.
This is from Mr. Roberts. In 2019, you co-authored Senate Bill 1001, which banned municipalities and counties from enacting rules regulating plastic food and beverage containers. With more and more plastic debris making it into our creeks, rivers, and lakes, littering our communities and our scenic areas, how do you convince voters that you did not prioritize the profits of plastics companies over the environment of eastern Oklahoma?
Oh, that's simple. Common sense. At the end of the day, the liberal agenda, and I hate using those buzzwords, but they're trying to get into our system, our local governments there. So the city of Norman is where this piece of legislation come from. They tried to ban plastic bags and was going to charge individuals for other bags for their groceries, which is ridiculous. And trying to force upon the citizens to use whatever Norman wanted to, and there was no reason for that, for over control of government, telling citizens what they can and can't do. So that's why I authored that piece of legislation. I always stand on the side of common sense policies instead of bureaucracy.
Thank you. Trace?
Yeah, Mr. Snowfire, I have the next question for you. You have an interesting needle to thread politically. We've talked a little bit about it tonight. How do you respond to non-tribal voters who might look at your seat on the Cherokee Tribal Council as a bit of a conflict with your potential congressional service? And how do you respond to tribal voters who worry you would head to Yeah, tribal voters who were you head to Congress, not necessarily supported by some of the leaders in your tribe.
That's a very interesting question because it's a very interesting thing to try to defeat. And that's something that I've been doing. If you look at my voting record while serving the Cherokee Nation Council, I've served on there to protect constitutional right to bear arms that they've been violating over there. They've also violated citizens' right to due process and recently just violated the First Amendment right, freedom of speech. So if you look at my voting record there, I've stood for all the conservative values for my citizens there. Now, as far as getting tribal support, it just goes with that too, standing for their citizenship rights. And that's something that is very interesting to talk about whenever you have corrupted tribal leaders over the Cherokee Nation who has bought people off on this stage. They bought them off to try to get advantage on the Mcgregor decision and further enslave their citizens. We're trying to liberate their citizens. That's ultimately what Congress' responsibility is to give their individual rights and protect them. Right now, their rights are being undermined by the Hoskins administration at Cherokee Nation, and they're going to continue perpetuate that forward by buying off current legislators either in the House and even all the way up to the federal government. So if you vote for me, you're going to make sure that not only are you getting your state citizens' right protected, you're getting your individual American rights protected by being a Native American. So once again, vote for Wes Snowfire and I'll solve that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, this is for Mr. Barker. You are an attorney and a petroleum businessman who has donated a lot of money to your own campaign. You have listed 2 different Monkey Island addresses on your state and federal election registrations, and as best as we can tell from state databases, you have not voted in 6 years. Why should everyday Oklahomans believe you that you can relate to their needs, and is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure about the 2 different addresses on there, so it should be the same. But in terms of the voting record itself, which Mr. Derby so eloquently brought up earlier, I think we did have an issue on the last general election that I had just opened a $300 million property in Arkansas a couple weeks prior, and we had an emergency that day that required my presence there on election day so that I could at least handle some of the issues that were presenting our employees at the time. We were running on a skeleton staff. And I'll do anything that I need to do, whether it be clean tables, flip rooms, or wash dishes, so that I can have an employment force that I have over 3,000 employees in 4 different states, so that they can be able to get to the polls. So that commitment to my employees, that commitment to my community is exactly why I got into this race, because I didn't feel that we had people that were well-rounded enough to be able to handle these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, last question to you. I believe you ran for but lost a race for Cherokee County Sheriff, and you don't have experience, to my knowledge, in elected office and haven't raised much money to get your message out here. How do you convince people that you're the guy who can win this election, in June or August or November?
I did run for sheriff because I got tired of the stuff not being done back home with the sheriff's department, not responding to calls and stuff. That's why I didn't run for. That's why I ran for sheriff. The reason I'm running for Congress and the reason I believe that I'm qualified for this office is I did work for our government for over 20 years. I know how it works. I'm not dumb. Whenever you talk about raising money for this office, I intentionally didn't raise any money. I haven't spent over $5,000. That's the problem with Washington, D.C. We have too many politicians that have gotten rich off of bigwigs, billionaires, special interest groups, and everything else. Till we get money out of Washington, D.C., we're not going to change it. We got to start sending people up there that's going to take care of business, that's not going to accept all this money, be bought off by all these special interest groups and lobbyists, and is going to stand for the American people and do what's right. That's all I'm asking. That's why I'm running. And that's the reason that I think I'm qualified for this, because I know I'm going to go up there for the people. I don't have an ego in this. I don't have a personal agenda. I don't have anything in it. I want to go home and stay and live in the woods where I live at right now. But you know what? I'm tired of what they're doing to our country. They brought it to our knees. I'm sick of it. Just like everybody else, time to put a stop to it. And that's why I'm back out here trying to do what I want, what I'm fighting for again, is represent the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause. That's the end of round 3. We're going to go to our closing statements. We're going to go the same order we did to start things off. 60 seconds, folks. Representative Avery Fricks, 60 seconds to you, sir.
Well, first, let me say thank you all for being here with us tonight. Thank you all for hosting this debate. You know, in my life, a lot of people have counted me out. They said that I was too young for business. They said that I was not the establishment's choice for politics. But you know, they counted somebody else out too, and that was President Donald Trump. They said he would never be president. They said he would never build the wall. They said he would never regain energy independence. But he did. Doubt only fueled his determination, and it fuels mine too. Donald Trump was the first president that put America first. And as your congressman, I will always put America first. But even further, I will always put Oklahoma first. I'm young, I'm fearless, and I'm ready to fight for you in D.C. I'm asking for your vote for Avery Fricks on Tuesday, June 28th. You can visit our website at averyfricks.com. Thank you again. God bless you.
Mr. Fricks, thank you. Mr. Quinn, 60 seconds.
America's in trouble. We have an administration that's trying to destroy the current capitalistic society that we live in. I think there's been questions on this stage tonight that prove to you that not only in the legislative body, but here on this stage tonight, when the questions come, when the votes come, and you have to be honest, you have to be trusted, I can make that tough decision. And you know why? Because I believe in you. Because I believe in America. Because I believe in this great state that we live in. The decisions are tough. The pressures are hard. I'm not going for myself. I'm not going for a career. I'm not going to boost my resume. I'm going to make that difficult decision when it comes election time, because many of the people that are there are wanting to be there because of the prestige, because of the perks. That's not me. I want to go to help turn that ship around. Whether it's the principles that Tom Coburn and exposing all of the wasteful spending that he did in his time, I want to be that stopgap measure that says, I know when I disagree with him that he's honest. I know when he says yes, there's a core value, there's a principle that's tied to that. Vote for Marty Quinn, June 28th.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Snowfire, and your next 60 seconds, closing remarks.
What are you looking for in your next congressman? We've gone all over the 28 counties in the 2nd Congressional District, and what we keep hearing is they're wanting someone different. And I am that different person. You know, tonight we've heard from everyone up here, and it's all just the same old politician stuff. So what are they going to do for themselves? We've got people that are bought off by Cherokee Nation. We've got people that are bought off by Big Pharma or other special interest groups. You know, from me and my track record, I stand up for you, the citizens. I am a proven fighter who's ready to go to D.C., because if there's any hope for America in this country, it's to vote for something different. You know that. I know that. That's the reason why I'm running for office. And I need your support and vote June 28th, Wes Snowfire. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, 60 seconds to your closing remarks.
We were stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and the Marine Corps thought they would send me back to Iraq. I was walking down the gangway. My family, we all said our goodbyes, and my oldest boy was old enough to talk, and he said, as I was walking away, he says, "Daddy, don't go." And I thought, you know, why am I leaving again? I should just turn around and go back. But then I realized we have to stand up and fight for them. We've got to stand up and fight for what America truly is. And I thought fighting them there would keep us from having to fight here, but now they're here within the wire. We're fighting our own party. We're fighting our own government, a communist government. There's got to be sacrifices. I know what that sacrifice is about. I know what freedom costs. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect your children, my children, and each and every one of us. If you want someone that's really going to go up and fight for we the people in this God bless constitutional republic, I'm asking to be your champion. Send me to Congress, and we'll take the fight for liberty to the halls of Congress. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Oklahoma.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barker, 60 seconds to closing remark for you.
Now, we talk about having a good fighter that's going to represent our values, somebody that's going to go up and fight President Biden, fight Nancy Pelosi, fight the woke agenda. But what we don't need in eastern Oklahoma is a shadow boxer, somebody that's going to go up there and punch it air. We need somebody that doesn't just have the right attributes, but has the right experience as well. This is something that I hope to bring to the table. This is something that I hope to be able to go out there so that we can actually have people that do their job rather than just go up and throw a temper tantrum, get themselves in front of a camera. We don't need another talking head. So I'm going up there with the expertise, with the experience of being able to help push and work on federal legislative issues over my work history and use my business and professional background as a committed resource to be able to speak with the individuals here in this district and make sure that their needs are taken care of in Washington. This is what we need. My name is Guy Barker. I'd appreciate your support on the 28th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schiller. I think, Jonathan, I stole your thunder, but Mr. Schiller, 60 seconds to you.
Thank you. So I remember being in grade school at Irving Elementary in Mvskoke and voting in my first mock presidential election. And I remember voting for Ronald Reagan, and I remember being so proud to be an American. And I want that to be for my kids and for your kids. I want them to be proud to be Americans, and I want my future grandkids and your grandkids to grow up in a great America. And if we keep sending politicians to Washington, nothing is going to change. Listen, in Oklahoma, we know what it means to put America first. It means securing our border. It means bringing our jobs and manufacturing home. It means energy independence and getting our country moving in the right direction. I'm not a politician. I'm an Oklahoman, and I won't ever forget that. Thank you, and God bless.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Is it on? Why would I be the best person for the job? You know what? We've been up here for 2 hours. How many arguments have you heard on this stage? We're all like-minded. And we can't even get along for 2 hours. We need to stop fighting. We've got to go do the work the American people want. And we've got to put the time in to do it. This isn't about us. This is about you all. Go do the job, guys. That's all it takes. Every one of these guys up here are pretty good guys. I like every one of them. We're all like-minded. That's what I hope we get to in Washington, D.C. A bunch of like-minded people who can do the job, who will get together and start working with the American people and get our energy costs back down, get our prices back down, start driving it up for the American people, get your budgets back up where you can actually go on vacations, put gas in your car, food on your plate, and clothes on your kids' back. That's what we got to get back to. If you give me the opportunity to be your congressman on June 28th, I know respect is earned and not given, and I'll do everything I can every day to earn your trust and respect. And I'll be standing on the stage every 120 days explaining to myself what I'm doing in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Derby, now it's your turn.
Thank you very much. David Derby, running for Congress, CD2. Who do you want, a lion or a lamb? You see, I voted for Donald J. Trump in 2016, and his second hire was Stuart Jolly, who endorsed me. He's a national field director, and he's endorsed me for this particular campaign. You see, the reason why he endorsed me is because I have a proven track record here in the state of Oklahoma as a conservative legislator. You see, I have a 100% pro-life background, 100% pro-life voting background by the Oklahomans for Life. I also have a 100% voting record for the Second Amendment, have an A+ rating for the NRA, a lifetime member of the NRA, stuff that I couldn't tell you at the first 60 seconds. That's the type of representation that you will also have in the 2nd Congressional District, someone who has a proven track record, stands up for what is right, was taught that by a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and will fight for you every day that he draws breath on this earth. My name is David Derby, derbyforcongress.com. I'm humbly asking for your vote on June 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. T.
Christian conservative values. You know, we started with that tonight. I thought the majority of us on this stage had that. I'm not so sure about that anymore. But that's what I have. I have Christian conservative values. The other thing that my focus is going to be is on safety. You know, a year and a half ago, we could afford gas, we could afford groceries, we could afford vacations, and now under the Biden administration, we can't afford any of that. We've got to change that. The other thing, my biggest focus is going to be on safety. You know, we want to make, Trump made America great again, and that's all been scratched away by the Biden administration. So we've got to start over with that. All the things we've talked about tonight, all of them are good things. But the thing I want to focus on is our number one resource in this country. We have to keep our number one resource in this country safe, and that's our kids. If we can't keep our kids safe in the schools, if we can't keep our people safe on the streets, then everything else is irrelevant. JohnnyTeehee.com. I've been a protector and a server my entire life, and that's what I want to do in Washington, D.C. I want to keep eastern Oklahoma and Americans safe.
Thank you very much. Representative Roberts, bring us home.
Thank you, Dustin Roberts. I'm running for the 2nd Congressional District for the simple fact that I'm tired of people just yelling and screaming to the top of their lungs on Fox News, CNN, or any other thing that they can get publicity so that way they can publish a book to never do anything. They don't work for us. This race comes down to resumes. Resumes matter. From the moment 9/11 happened, it changed my life. I wanted to work for our country, make a better, safer country. Problems in the state of Oklahoma. I ran for office, I fixed them. I'm running for Congress because there's problems there, and it's not time for anybody to yell and scream, resumes matter. And I've got the resume from the military, the business aspect, and being a legislator and understanding the issues and fixing those issues and not just sitting in a room or sitting in my office with my legs kicked up. I worked. I want to be your worker, your champion for Congress. It's about having a backbone, not a wishbone. And Dustin Roberts for Congress.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's debate. Thank you to the candidates, to our sponsors. Thank you, News on 6. Jonathan, great job. We'd never even met in person before tonight. Thank you to the Frontier and all of our friends in the media who've shared and covered this debate. Remember, you can still share it. It'll be up on our Facebook pages. It'll be on the News on 6 YouTube page. Let people see this and hear from their candidates directly. Over the next week before Tuesday, June 28th, Election Day, we have one more debate in our series, June 22nd, the Republican primary for state superintendent at the Waterford in Oklahoma City. Tune in, check that out. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody here at the Bartlesville Community Center. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for believing that public debates matter. They really do. Thank you. Good night.